All right, welcome to Ballroom Feed. This is Technique Tuesday. Today we're gonna do another turn type. So we're gonna do what is a pivot turn and talk about it in two different styles briefly and just kind of give you what this word means in general, or at least our interpretation of how we like to teach this pivot turn specifically, right? We like to teach several different turn types so we can categorize them and make the dancing a little bit easier to use, right? Or learn new patterns even quicker. So a pivot turn, what happens is I'm standing on a foot and pivots are typically half a turn. So if I start facing this direction, I would pivot and I would end facing the opposite direction, obviously, right? The purpose of a pivot is, let's say, to turn half a turn and then continue moving in the direction I started in. So sometimes you do one pivot, sometimes you do multiple pivots, but they're not used to change direction in terms of where I'm traveling. They're used to continue moving, right? So if I'm gonna move this direction here, I walk on either foot, I then turn towards the foot I'm using, not the other one. So if I'm standing on my left foot, I turn towards my left foot, right? Turn towards it, and I made half a rotation. I'm not gonna travel where I came from. I'm actually gonna take a step backwards, and then I could turn again, and I could repeat this process over and over again to continue turning in the same direction. If I were to step on this left foot and turn to the left like I just did, but then I walked back where I came from, that is not a pivot turn, or at least the way we define some of these turn types. We're gonna call that something different, like a swivel, because it changes direction, right? So again, in this context here, on my left foot, I turn towards the foot I'm using. I'm gonna take a step backwards on my right foot, and that could be it. I could maybe I'm doing a Roomba box or something. I just had this one little pivot in the middle. Or I could go back on my foot, and now when I'm going backwards and pivoting, I'm turning towards my other foot actually. So now when I go backwards, I'm not turning towards the foot I'm standing on, I'm turning towards the opposite direction of the foot I'm standing on, so I can go rotate. So when I go forward, I'm turning towards the foot I'm standing on. When I go backwards, I'm turning away from the foot that I'm standing on. Roughly half of a turn each time I make this rotation, right? So I walk forward turning, forward turning, back. Briefly, two styles we use this in, let's call it smooth and rhythm. It could be Latin and standard, whatever it's gonna be, right? So when I dance in rhythm or Latin, we typically check through a pivot. So I walk on this foot, I typically do a checking action where my back knee bends into my front leg and I pivot through that feeling right here, right? Instead of my feet being apart. In rhythm and Latin, we typically don't pivot with our feet apart because you can see what this looks like, you know? However, in smooth dancing, we do typically pivot with our feet apart because we go take bigger steps and walk. So now my feet actually stay apart the entire time as I pivot. So our definition is gonna remain the same. It's us traveling, continuing to travel in the same direction while making these rotations and switching feet. And the character or the technique I use between my leg action changes depending on what style that I'm dancing. Right, so this is the idea of the pivot itself, that it keeps traveling in the same direction, roughly making half a turn apiece, alternating between forward and back steps, and you'll use this turn type a lot as you get more advanced because you're gonna travel on the floor much more. We already have a video about 3-step turns. We're gonna do swivels, so we have a whole bunch of different things we're gonna do with trying to categorize each of these turn types so you can get stronger at each thing individually and then plug into all the dances and the patterns you already know, right? If you don't know, we have a website called ballroomfeed.com. You can check out all these other free videos, the Technique Tuesdays. We have a bunch of more advanced paid videos too, which is not too expensive, and then a wedding program. So we have a lot of different options actually. You can go see some of this content. We have hundreds of videos up at this point. So check out more here on the YouTube itself or on the website. You can see all the same things. So we'll see you next time.